Howdy there, YouTube. This is T Walker, aka Tanner, gonna do a video for you today. Before I start, this is going to be a video about a personal preference of mine. What I'm not doing is asking you to agree with me. In fact, I can very easily see why you wouldn't agree with me on this particular point. So I just want to get that out of the way. I'm not asking you to. I'm just, telling you about a personal preference of mine, what I like when I play a game. So, to start this off, let's talk about setting. Every game needs a setting. Every game should have a setting. That setting should be detailed enough to where it makes a logical sense in its existence, to where the setting, even if it's fantastical, can feel, real. Um, so a setting needs that. However, I believe a setting should stop at that. And this is why. I, as a player, not as a designer, not as a GM, but as a player, don't like when a game flavors something for me when it doesn't need to. Let me give you an example of this. Let's use a paladin in D&D, for example, or just a paladin, for example. In order to be a paladin, you are you uphold good, you are kind of this paragon, this shining example of chivalry, you are there when someone's in need. However, to exude these qualities, you don't necessarily need to take the paladin class, or at least I don't believe you necessarily need to take the paladin class. You can be a paladin as your flavor, but still be a cleric, or still be a fighter. Because a paladin is a set of flavor. It is, a way you act, a code, a point at which you held yourself on. So I don't like a game telling me that, no, if you want to be a paladin and have, the flavor of a paladin, you have to be the paladin class. Raw. I don't like that so much. I understand if you do, I completely do. But me as a player, I think that is more player choice, how I want to run my character. Now, Brady mentioned druids, because I said mechanically druids are a mixture between a cleric, wizard, and fighter. And he did not like that. However, I think we kind of mixed up. I think the flavor of a druid is amazing, right? I would love to play a druid. However, I don't think that a druid class is a good way to achieve as a player. I wouldn't want a game saying, if you want to be a druid, you have to be this type. You have to take this class. Because a druid really isn't that class. It's, as Brady said perfectly, it's this historical, whole other unique being that is so much more than D&D's, mechanics for the druid. So if I'm playing a druid, I'll probably never even touch, as a player, I'll probably never even touch the druid class. I'll take, some fighter, I'll take some, wizard, I'll take some cleric, and I'll kind of mesh those together, maybe, take some prestige classes, and mix these things together. But all the time, from level 1, I will say that I am a druid, and I will act like a druid I believe a druid should act. Because it is of my opinion that I should be able to flavor my character however I want. Another example is, say I am the rogue class. This doesn't mean I'm a rogue. This means I have access to the rogue class's abilities. And me as a player, I like to flavor those abilities completely different than, the rogue stereotype. For example, Doug, not Black Barnes. Doug mentioned, a player playing a rogue but he's not a rogue. He's a diplomat, because rogues mechanically just get the most skills, and this character just wants to have the skills so he can be a diplomat. Well, I'm not going to call myself a rogue. I'm going to call myself a diplomat. I'm going to choose abilities that would, function for a diplomat. However, I don't need to pick the rogue class to be a diplomat. I could pick a fighter and pretend to be a diplomat. I just happen to be a diplomat that's big and burly. You see, my point is that these classes, or D&D's classes, or any classes in a game, imbue to you a certain amount of flavor. However, me as a player, I like to be in control of that flavor. I like to, be able to change it and move it. So, this is why, personally, I like a game to just give me the bases, the basic, basic abilities, you know, and kind of lay those abilities in, a few maybe classes. All right. Now, why? Why do I like this? Because when the game doesn't give you the druid, doesn't give you the paladin, it's not that the game is not letting you be these types of people, or at least I believe. I believe that you just kind of pick the abilities you want, but then you get to flavor what those abilities make you. Do they make you a druid? Do they make you a diplomat? Do they make you a paladin? Because those three things I just said are, these unique flavors, which you don't need a class. You don't need a class of diplomat. You don't need a class of paladin. You don't need a class of druid to be. You need an imagination to be them. You need to say, okay, well, I may not have any magic whatsoever, but I'm still a paladin. I still uphold those ideals. I still worship a god. I still have these types of abilities. Or, I mean, I have these flavors. The flavor is what makes me a paladin, not the abilities. So, as a player, I like to be able to make that whenever possible. I like to be able to put that flavor in whenever possible. For example, if, a setting doesn't really say how a magic user gets his magical powers, I love that. I like when the setting doesn't do that because that means me as a player, I get to create that. Of course, it needs to be okayed by the GM, but I love creating that. I love making a reason why I have these magical powers. Um, I don't like it so much when the system mechanics or the game does that for me. I mean, yeah, I'll play it, of course, and it'll be fun, but I just like so much more the ability to say, oh, well, my magical powers come from, you know, this point where I was a child, I was approached by this kind of magical being, and I was enamored by it. I didn't know really what it was, and it asked for, a bit of my soul. And as a child, what use was my soul to me? And it promised me this magical power, and so of course I made a deal with it. Now, that won't work in some settings, and I understand that, and I wouldn't make that in some settings, but I like when a system and a setting together give me the opportunity to do that. Now, I understand that that's a lot more work on the player. He needs to look at each of his abilities, and he needs to come up with what he is from that. And, that's a lot of work, and he needs to, say, come up with a reason why he has each of these abilities, but me as a player, I like to do that. I like to flavor where my abilities come from, and I don't like a game system to do it for me. I don't like when a game system says, you're a druid because you have the druid class, so you must act in this way. Now, I like to, be a fighter and, a cleric, or maybe a cleric, and call myself a druid. I mean, what's stopping me from being a druid? I can still tap into that flavor without ever touching the class, or at least I believe I should be able to. Sorry, just checking notes. Um, Now, if you take this to its natural extreme, um, you can also apply this to stats. I like to create the flavor of my stats. I like to say that, my combat efficiency comes from willpower and intelligence instead of strength and dexterity. And, as a player, I just like to be able to do that. I like to be able to flavor it in the way I want it, not have the game system say your good combat a good combat efficiency comes from strength and dex and con. But, these are just opinions. I understand that. So, anyway, this has been T Walker, aka Tanner. Based on the comments, I'm going to, I just found out that I can put notes on my video. So, based on the comments I receive, I'm going to put notes to hopefully further explain myself because it is very hard to explain this point of view. But I hope you guys have been able to understand it. Anyway, this has been T Walker, aka Tanner, and I'm signing off.